Hello and welcome to the Accent Podcast, where I, Asner Midov, interview accomplished investors, entrepreneurs, business and thought leaders about their personal and professional journeys. In this episode, I sit down with PJ Pereira, the co-founder and the creative chairman of Pereira O'Dell, one of the leading advertising agencies. Over its relatively short history, Pereira O'Dell has won every major industry award, including countless Cannes Lions and Emmy Award. Advertising, martial arts, African mythology, childhood in Brazil, business, family, commercials, guns, violence, creativity, writing. These are just a few subjects we talked about, but I'll let you listen for yourself. PJ, thank you very much for joining the podcast.
My pleasure.
So we have a lot to talk about today because you have very rich biography. So let's start with understanding what Pereira O'Dell is.
Pereira O'Dell is an advertising agency, and we like to see this company as a place that is trying to make advertising if it was being invented today. Right, so we are very aware of the techniques and the tools and the possibilities that we have. But if we had to invent what advertising is, given those tools and how to combine them, almost like a Lego set, you know, you can do TV ads, you can do stuff online, you can do mobile, you can use print ads and out of home and direct marketing and all those things that are all like Lego bricks. You can follow the instructions on the set, or you can just do something that is coming from your own imagination. I like to see this place as a place that has all the bricks, has instructions for when we need it, but is going to create marketing campaigns they're going to be what they need to be for every single job assignment that we have in our hands, as if we were inventing advertising for the first time just to solve that one problem.
So the reason why people invent things is because something is broken, or maybe they want to express themselves differently. What drives you guys?
I think that what caused this to happen is that the ad business changed quite a lot during the last 20 years. And looking back, 20 years is so much, like you haven't noticed it. It's one of those slow cooking things that when you're inside, sometimes it takes a longer. You expect it to be slower, but at the core of it is the fact that we have always been able to count on buying people's time. Marketers, like the brands, the big companies, always assume that good or bad, if your idea is okay, if it's not horrible, you can always buy enough attention and it's going to work. This is changing. It's getting harder and harder to buy people's attention. If you look at the Emmys this year, most of the nominees are actually from Netflix or Amazon or Hulu. And from those, only Hulu is partially funded by advertising. So the quality is moving. The audience is going to follow that. And what's going to happen to the opportunities that marketers have to talk to people? It will be smaller and smaller and smaller. Probably at some point, you're going to have the big events like the World Cup and the Olympics and the sports and the NBA. It's like you can play things that you have to watch live, and everything else is going to be in a gray zone that you may not have an opportunity to buy stuff there. So you have to be interesting. That changes the cornerstone of this entire industry that we call advertising and marketing or whatever it is. And once that big of a shift happens, you have to reinvent it. The strange part, though, is that this is not a transformation that came from within. The marketers and the ad people and the creatives and the strategists and people that work and make their living out of it, they were too sleepy to notice and to take advantage of that. Who caused that? Were the crazy engineers that came as barbarians invading our turf. It's not like we're going to shift and make people watch everything on demand from their homes and with their remote control and YouTubes and Netflix. And that is what changed the thing. The barbarians from the engineering side and from the consumer side. And now this industry has to evolve and has to change. Luckily, we were born right at the cusp of these moment changing, and we could adapt and change and adjust to it right as we saw it coming. So for us, this transformation is a big opportunity. For anyone that has a big machine, a big monster to feed, it can become an issue.
And you are one of the co-founders and you're creative chairman, right?
Yeah, that's my background.
And what does creative chairman do?
Let's start with break that into two parts. Andrew O'Dell, that is my partner, he is responsible for the business. So the client relationships and the health of the business, and if people are happy here, if they're excited, they're stoked to come to work every day. And I take care of the work, right? My job is to make sure that the work is exciting, is creating enough results for the brands that are investing their money in, but also for consumers that are investing their time in it. And for me, this is the role of every creative in this industry, in this newly shaped industry that is called advertising, for the lack of a better name, is to find a way to be worth the investment of money from brands and time from consumers. As a chairman, is a position that I put myself in recently because I wanted to be dissociated from the day by day, from the assignments and the deliverables and the dates and the schedules, and be able to look at everything that is happening and be able to spot what are the most strategic things that are happening, so I can jump in and help on those, because it's a very important client, or because it's a very important moment in a client's life, or it's because there's an amazing opportunity to do groundbreaking work, or because it's a client that is in trouble and needs more support, and I go there and jump it. So that gives me more flexibility. I think that the moment I put myself in a chairman position, they stop counting on me. Then I can walk in when I feel like it's a more special and more important, more critical moment. And I think it gives me a better opportunity to help our clients this way.
Among your clients, you have some of the largest companies in the world. How do you win them? What sets you apart from your competition?
I think a lot of that comes from reputation. We're 10 years old. You just turned 10. We have done some work that got a lot of recognition and a lot of praise in the industry, and brands want a little bit of that, or want a little bit of that magic. And when they're looking for brands, for agencies that have done groundbreaking work, we're one of them. We're one of the ones that pop when you start to search. A lot of times, we hear about companies that call us, hey, just Googled who did this campaign and I found your name. And so, do you want to talk? So yeah, of course, it'd be great. And it is always, for us, is always about finding people that are interested in doing exciting work more than anything. And it's less about what is a brand or what is a company, and more about people that are excited, that want to do exciting things, because that's when you can merge the return on investment for both the brand and consumers. If you're just there to follow the guy that you got from above in your company and make the small number there, and that's when you lose sight that if you're not interesting, consumers are not going to be paying attention, and you don't do it, therefore you're not interesting, then they do not pay attention, then you lose your job. And that's not the most pleasant situation to be working on.
One experience I had with the larger company, they're so bureaucratic. Do you ever have a situation where you have a hard time convincing that this idea is what they actually need, or are they pretty open to what you guys propose?
I think it happens all the time. It's like, if you think of the path from an idea, from the moment that an idea is born to a moment that it's out in the world, thriving and being appreciated in any segment, is not only in advertising. There are always more paths that lead to it dying than to it surviving. Every idea, every creative process includes moments that you have more ideas, and then you select the best one, and then you have more ideas to take that further, and then you select some, and along the way, there are so many moments where the ideas can die, where these amazing possibilities die because there are too many people included in the discussion, because there's lack of vision, or because there's just lack of training on or confidence. But great ideas die all the time. So this is our job as a creative agency, is exactly to help clients keep the best ones alive. If we don't have amazing ideas all the time, we want to make sure that they're always smart and effective and going to work well. But once we see something truly special, we have to go and call the client in and stop them and feel like, now this is one of those, one of the special ones. Let's protect it. That's one of the moments that I walk in. Like, we cannot just let this slip. The chairman position allow me to do that. So they're not expecting to see me on the regular assignments, but the moment I walk in and sit on the table, say, hey, we have a good one here. Let's make it be what it needs to be. That's the moment that I sit on the table.
Can you walk us through the whole process from the beginning to the end?
There is a process, but it's a lot of that is a group of smart people talking and trying to find a solution for a problem. A friend of mine asked me once, what is my definition of creativity? I don't think my definition applies to every situation, every creative situation, but for our world here, I look at creativity as the opposite of logic, right? Logic is a process that you take the definition of a problem and you take one step further and then another step further and another step further, and eventually you're going to get somewhere. The problem with logic is that we're all trained to use the same kind of logic. So if you want to stand out, logic is not necessarily the best way to get there, because the logical conclusion, the logical solution that you're going to get, if you start from the same starting point and use the same data, the same information, the same perception of the world, you're going to get the same place that your competitor is getting. And so no one has an edge, and whoever is bigger or stronger is going to win. And our game, our practice here has a lot to do with finding an edge, a competitive edge to people that are beyond their means, right? My job is to make my clients' money be worth way more than what they're really spending. So the creative process includes looking at the problem, trying to define the problem, define what the goal is or where you want to get in a way that is different enough from everyone else, and then try different ideas. They're not necessarily logical until you find one that makes so much sense that it feels like it was logical, but you still feel like, I have no idea where that came from. The moments of joy from this profession comes from when someone looks at you with that big smile and like, wow, it makes total sense, but I have no idea how you got there. This is when you know that you have something creative in your hands.
How do your clients measure the success of the campaign or the ad that they ask for?
Ultimately, it's sales. Ultimately, is like short-term sales and long-term sales, and you can track if your brand is evolving because in some categories, consideration and how good you feel about the brand indicates your intention to buy. Sometimes it's just like how much people bought the next 5 days after you launch the campaign. Is a little bit of everything, but ultimately, if we're not selling stuff, it's not working. If you look in the long term, though, and this is what we have been trying to train these new generation people just joining the industry and train our clients and prepare everyone to think that way, you have to also consider the joy and the time that consumers are spending with this. Because in order to sell your product, you bore them, but you're effective enough to sell on that next weekend. But they left with a bad taste that you were rude or you were too annoying or you're boring. The next time they notice that you're talking to them, they're going to turn off and going to flip the channel or going to turn something on or going to bring their phone in and text someone else. And that challenge that we have as marketers it became way more daunting and more difficult. So in order to build an experience with consumers where they start to see our voice as welcome and as a pleasant thing, something that they want to have in their lives, you need to be worth the time that they're spending. So if in one side, ultimately what we're doing is measured in terms of sales, whether if it's short term or long term, it's still sales. We need to also start to think about how each second that we steal from people's lives are going to be appreciated. Because if they're not, it's going to be just more expensive to do it the next time because they're going to know how to turn off your voice.
Obviously, you guys been very successful. Pereira O'Dell have received many awards, and you personally have received quite a few.
we got some.
I'm wondering which one of those are kind of most memorable to you.
I think that the triple Grand Prix at Cannes is a special one. Cannes Festival is a very important for those who are not aware. It's like he's like the Oscars of advertising. He's the one when like the entire industry goes there to celebrate who did the best work of the year. Winning a gold at Cannes is something that people can hope to have one or two in your entire career if you're really lucky to have the condition to get there. A Grand Prix is something so unexpected that you can't even aspire to do one. It's like if it happens, you celebrate, you get drunk, right? There was one year, a couple of years ago, that we did a campaign that was so well accepted, and it was so strange in terms of how we broke the norms of different categories that we didn't know in which category to enter. So we entered in film, we entered in the interactive category, we entered in the content, brand entertainment category. And for like, let's see if one of those juries like it. And we ended up winning the Grand Prix in all three. It was the craziest day of my life. Getting like one call after another. I was still celebrating one when I got a call from another. It's crazy. And I think that is a very happy memory of getting 3 times that level of recognition. And I consider myself very lucky to have had the opportunity to work with the group of people, and both on our side and the client side as well, that allowed us to take an idea that was so simple and so interesting and not let it die along the way, because it could have died so many times. We brought it back to life so many times that I can't tell.
So to give listeners a perspective, Grand Prix are not given every year, right? Unlike golden or silver or bronze, right?
Yeah, the Grand Prix are something that they do most years, but they don't have to. After our Grand Prix in entertainment, for example, the next 2 years there were no Grand Prix, and we kind of held the belt for 3 years in a row. It's kind of a funny thing, but the jury can decide not to give it if they don't think there's anything there, any of the golds are worth of that status. They don't do it.
The work that you've gotten these awards for was The Beauty Inside, right?
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit about that project? What really resonated with the jury and the public?
Yeah, I wasn't in the room to tell what the jury thought, but I can guess. Being the juries kind of multiple times, I can kind of guess. But what happened there was that it was a very simple idea. We're working for Intel and Toshiba, trying to show how their partnership was an interesting one, but mostly it was still led by Intel as the leading brand. And Intel had done for decades the Intel Inside campaign, trying to show and convince people that is what's inside that counts. So it felt like, all right, if we want to turn that into entertainment, into something that people are going to seek after and want to play and spend their time on, we need to find a story that is about what's inside that counts and make it interesting enough. So we did one in 1 year. There was a story about this girl that was kidnapped, and she found herself in a room with an internet connection, and the internet had to help her find a way out, and it was super successful. But along the way, while we were working on that, there was a day that we got a message from them and said, hey, their legal teams are worried because if this girl is afraid of any kind of violence, we cannot do it.
Here we go.
And if like that was the thing that kills a good idea. It's like, how can you do a thriller where the main character is not afraid? So that day, the team was like petrified of fear. It's like we're gonna, this idea that we work so hard to get is gonna die, and what do? We cannot do it. It's like, yeah, no, let's relax. What they're saying is that they don't want a thriller. It's not that they don't want this idea. Now we have to find another idea that is not a thriller, that take this thought of what is inside that counts, and the idea of combining Hollywood level entertainment with social media. That is one of the things that we sold them into, because they're a technology company, 2 technology companies. And let's find what is the other genre that we can do. And eventually we landed in this very little story, kind of this sweet little story of this person, this guy named Alex, that every day wakes up in a different body. And he doesn't know why, he doesn't know when he started, but he wakes up and one day he's a tall man, the next one he's a short woman. One day he's very old, the next day he's just a kid. What kind of life he can live with that, what kind of wardrobe, what kind of relationship he can have. And then we started to get really excited about this. And it's essentially a story about what's inside the accounts, but done in a magical, fantastical way that you didn't expect. Is that illogical things? So like, how did you get to that point? It was like by throwing ideas on the table, one on the wall, and one of them was like, wow, that's actually interesting. And it kept us hooked, and we couldn't stop thinking about it. So when we came back to the client to answer their thought on how to make a thriller not scary, we told them, you cannot do it. Either go for a thriller, or if you don't want to do a thriller, it's fine. You do this. And we sold them into this idea of Beauty Inside. That day, we decided to go for the thriller anyway, because it was important to establish with consumers the fact that Intel and Toshiba were not what they expected.
Yeah.
The fear made that feel like, oh, I didn't see that coming. But then the following year, we were going to go for the love story of Alex. That it's like the core of it. It's like he wakes up in a different body every day, but what happens when he falls in love? How can he have a relationship? So we told them, the client was fascinated by it as well. It's like, let's do it. When I told them that I would do the thriller first, they looked at me and said, oh, okay, but what if it doesn't work? We may not have the chance of doing the next one later. And we all like it better. And I told them, it's going to work. I'll make it work so we can do the other one. But then we left, and I was like, okay, of course I'm scared because something may happen. But I was pretty confident we were going to be able to pull it off. We did it. The following year, we did the Beauty Inside, and it was even more successful than the story of the girl in the room. And it was one of those stories that became like a landmark in the advertising space. As okay, this is how you can create content that is interesting, that sells products, is interesting, it's worth the time and worth the money, and establishes a new boundary of what advertising can be.
So that idea was executed so well that I believe it received Emmy.
Yeah, you're right. You got an Emmy that year. And I think this is one of the things that I heard from juries. As they were discussing, the jury got and stopped and said, hey guys, we are talking about entertainment here. This idea just won. We got lucky that the Emmys were awarded 3 days before the judging. So like 3 days ago, this idea won an Emmy against regular. It was the first time that an ad won an Emmy against regular TV, because they have the advertising Emmys, but an ad winning an Emmy against regular content had never happened. And they felt like, okay, these people are paying to watch this. They're really spending their time, and the entertainment industry thinks that this is better than all the other stuff that they're regularly producing. So I think we need to seriously look into that, and they did, and I think that was the last step to win the Lions as well.
But that campaign, the cinematography was amazing, the acting was amazing. I was looking at this; it's like a movie.
We knew that we needed to do that Hollywood style, not advertising style. It needs to be more Hollywood and Madison Avenue, right? And when we started to talk to directors, like we need to go to some names that people have done things that we admire and respect, and people that really fall in love with this idea as much as we did. The best things I have done in my life are being part of. They are usually things that every person that touches it makes it better than you thought originally that they could be. So every creative person, every creative contribution takes that idea a step further. So if the director is going to be very important in this project. We talked to a few. There was one of them that it was a young guy. It was like our wild horse, and that was the youngest of them all. But he had just won like the biggest prize in Sundance the previous year. And he talked to us, and he felt like, I want to make this the most romantic story I've ever done. And when he said that, I felt like, you know what? That's our guy. And it was wonderful. He brought his eye, his perspective, but more than anything, his vision of making it the most romantic story he has ever done was what made it. And I think it's what makes it special. You can feel it. You can feel the love. You can feel the pain. You can feel the struggle that the characters have. And once you feel that, everything else is everything else.
You've been in Cannes jury yourself several times, right? And last year, you were president of entertainment.
The brand entertainment category. It's the same category. One of the categories where Beauty Inside won the Grand Prix.
What does that category focus on?
It focuses on on the ideas that are chased by consumers. You know, their ideas are made to be entertaining, not to buy the time from the audience, which is for me the quintessential challenge that we were talking here before. There are things that we count that we're not going to be able to buy people's attention by putting a commercial. We have to be so good, so interesting, so charming that they are going to stop what they're doing when they hear about it and they want to spend some time. And once they start, they won't be able to stop. So they tend to be longer format. They tend to be less hard selling, but they also tend to leave a much longer impression. The experience that we have here is that the best things we've done in the brand entertainment space, they like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years later, people still remember, still talk about it and still miss it. Sometimes we get emails here from people, hey, when are you going to do another one of those Intel things? And yeah, it's good to hear that.
Upon completion of the festival, you and other members of jury decided to write a book.
Yes.
The Right of Branded Entertainment, correct? Yeah. Whose idea was it, and what is the book about?
So we had some of the most interesting discussions I've had in my life in that jury, and kind of just the process of picking which ones represented the future of this industry and where it was going, and the work that we liked the most was so rich that we stepped, in the beginning there, I told the jury that, so we are not here to tell the world what brand entertainment is. We are here to learn on behalf of the industry what it's becoming. So let's put everything, all the assumptions and everything that we think this category represents. Let's leave outside the room. Let's just watch the work. Let's play with it. And let's fall in love with the things that we fall in love. And then we talk about it and we understand why we fell in love with that. And then the winners will display that love and we'll explain to the world. All right, we did it and we picked an amazing list of winners. The problem was once we put them there, it wasn't very clear to the world why we picked them and what was the rationale behind all that. The richest part of the debate was getting lost. So one day, like a couple months after the judging, I sent everyone an email and asked them, so what's going on here? What do you want to try to organize this thing into a more this thought into a more structured way? And they all said, yeah, let's do it. So how about we write a book together? Each one of us write a chapter and I can organize it for you and tell which subject you're going to take. And they said, let's do it. And we did it in 4 months. We had the book written.
Your chapter is called Think Like a Marketer, Behave Like an Entertainer, and Move Like a Tech Startup. What did you mean by that?
I think the advertising business has been too focused on the creative side, to be honest. And I'm saying that as a creative. I don't take that lightly. If you look at how the world and how the business is today, like the best ideas have a combination somehow of big and bold strategies, very bright ideas, and very interesting use of technology. From those three, usually you have the best things have two of them very well. Sometimes you have all three of them, but the inspiration comes from those three fields. And I wanted to put them together in a way that inspires the agency to think and to do the work in the right way. So when we told them we need to think like marketers, it means that we have to think at the problems that we have the way that marketers think about them. We need to find the boldest strategies to achieve the results that they have and not get stuck on the brief that they give us. We need to reach the results, the sales results, the growth results that they need. And sometimes this is not going to come from consumer insights like we're used to. Sometimes it's going to come from a conversation with the sales force, or sometimes it's going to come from something stupid that the competition did. And we need to think like them if we want to do our work right. But we also need to behave like entertainers, because entertainers are the most disciplined group of people in terms of rewarding every second that people are dedicating to you. They treat the time that the audience is spending as an investment that they're making, and they need to give them return. Entertainment people are bankers of time, right?
That's and
we need to behave like entertainers to our clients. But we also need to be very nimble. And understand the fast pace of the world and how things and find new ways of operating and being fast and reacting fast to the world, like tech startups have managed to do. Because we cannot, in the past, when I started in advertising, the process was like you talk to a client, you do some research, you craft a brief, and you tell creatives what they need to do, and they come up with an idea, you discuss it, you test it, you approve it, then you go find who's going to produce it, you produce it, and then you launch it, and then you pray. Praying never felt like a good strategy, a good way of doing things to me. So I think I don't feel comfortable being paid to pray. So I would rather have more consistency and have more guarantees along the way. And I think that getting the process much tighter with lots of checks and balances along the way, where it's seeing and adjusting and living the ideas and the brands as we work, is a better, more modern way of doing that. So that's like the Silicon Valley side of that. So somehow it includes that thought, includes Madison Avenue, includes the Hollywood and the Silicon Valley work ethics and principles all together in a single statement.
So has this experience of being a jury and writing the book influenced or affected your view on your own work?
It made me more confident, because being a 10-year-old agency in an industry where there are lots of players that are 100 years old, and we're still a very young shop, we can do things that others can't just because we were structured at another time. There's my experience in juries and looking at what the best agencies in the world are doing for their best brands in the world just made me confident. We're in a good way and in a good path, and confidence has a lot to do with creativity, because the pain when you have to make a decision between two ideas that you like is excruciating. So you need to have some principles behind that is going to make you feel more comfortable with the decisions that you have just made, so you can move forward and make it better. And regardless if you made the right choice in the beginning, it will be the right choice in the end.
Outside of advertisement world, you're known as a fiction writer. And one of your works, Gods of Both Worlds, is actually a bestseller in your native Brazil.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
So the story of this book, it happens, and that's where the title comes from, it happens in two worlds at the same time. One story happens in São Paulo in 2001 with a young, white, very privileged young man that is called to be part of a very important mission that it just bothers him because he's too focused on his career. On the other side, so it's like these are the odd chapters. The even chapters are a story of these group of people. They're warriors and princes and princesses and diviners and kind of these powerful individuals that are called by the gods to recover the princes of destiny that have been they've been stolen by a group of witches. So it's a journey of two worlds having to collaborate to return destiny back to humankind. And it came from when I grew up as a white middle class boy in Brazil. You grew up hearing that all the African religions are a very important part of Brazilian culture, like the devil stuff. You don't get anywhere close to it. One day I became friends with some people that were very into it, and were also some of the best people that I've ever met. And I confronted them. So, are you lying to me and you're evil, or they lied to me and said when they said that this is evil? And they kind of smile, and then the smile already answered that to me. So I started to learn to study the mythology, and it's a fascinating mythology. As fascinating as the Greek and the Nordic and the Roman mythology, and sometimes even more. And I fell in love with it. And one day, looking at trying to understand how their divination system works, where they throw these cowrie shells, and it can fall like on one side, or depending on one side, the side that they fall, like it's almost like a 0 and 1 binary thing. And 16, they throw twice, that makes it 256 different positions that you can follow. This is, the geeky me started to scream. This is exactly how a binary system in a computer thing is. And throwing those little shells to hear from the gods, what the future is and what do I need to do. It's like what we do with Google today. The same way that if Google suddenly stops working, we will be in trouble. The old timers, the ancient civilizations, they would be very upset and very lost if they didn't have their Google. So the story of the book is that one day the divination system stopped working, and they had to, the gods from the ancient times and people from our time had to collaborate to return the powers of destiny to humankind. And that led to 3 books. And then I ended up writing a 4th that is the story of the villain in the story. There's a very evil woman. There's a cult leader in our times. And I brought it back. And it's almost like my Darth Vader, the origin of my Darth Vaders. And that was super successful as well. So in Brazil right now, I'm better known as a fiction writer than as an ad guy. For 4 or 5 weeks, I was the #1 Brazilian writer in the country. And it's like, I didn't see that coming. But because of the nature of the story, it took me 10 years to get it published, because the book publishers would just look at that and feel like, this is so strange, it's so niche, and these people don't read. They're like, what do you mean by these people? You mean by black people, or you mean by people, or mean people of those religions? What kind of outrageous statement are you making right now? And they, no, I didn't mean that. It just stopped talking and disappeared from my face, and then gladly they disappeared. But then 10 years later, when we won an Emmy for the beauty inside, I feel like, I think I can use that. So I started to write to the same publisher, say, hey, Emmy winning writer wants to publish a book about African mythology, and they feel like, yeah, let's do it. And then it happened. And so advertising actually helped me get my career as a fiction writer started as well.
So you reached back to some of the publishers, right? I'm curious, the ones who originally turned you down, what was their reaction?
I didn't write to the exact same ones. I wrote to the same companies, but 10 years later, it wasn't the same people.
Different people.
I think maybe they have evolved and they moved past some of those horrible thoughts and started to get more open-minded as well. But the publishing world is for a group of people, they're supposed to be the holders of the flag of culture and forward thinking. They're way more conservative than I expected.
How is promoting the book different or similar to promoting the brands?
It's more similar than it seems, because ultimately the book has a brand itself, and I know how to promote a brand. I know how to promote a book. This is just the difference is that instead of selling a product that is a liquid inside of a bottle or a powder inside of a box, is a story inside of a group of pages, right? Like a little brick of paper. We still need to get people to get interested in that or want to hear more and get excited about it, and then share whatever they saw and want to spend more time with it. And so it's still pretty much the same. The writing the story is very different from advertising, but the promoting the book is still the same.
How's the writing different?
When you're writing a story for an ad, you have that very clear sense of the result that it needs to cause. It needs to sell this product. You need to get people to sign up for this service. You need to get people to appreciate this brand. So you have a client, you have a boss, you have a goal, you have lots of things that direct you have to accomplish. Writing a book, the story is your boss. The story is the goal. The reader is maybe who you want to impress, but not really. It's like you have the story is telling you what to do, and you just follow it and try to make it as interesting as you can. But eventually, if the story that you want to write is a story for 10 people, I'm going to write the story for 10 people. If it's for 10 million people, I'm going to write for 10 million people. But I let the story lead.
One thing I've seen when I was looking at this book online is a movie-like trailer. Whose idea was that?
I've seen book trailers before. It's something that is starting to get hotter in the industry, but because I have the means and I have the context and I have friends. They're always looking for opportunities to do cool stuff with an edge that they wouldn't be able to do for other brands. Made me think of, maybe this is a good way to leverage my relationships and get some people to want to do it because I'm the client. I would approve things that very few clients would approve. So by doing that, I can get the edgiest and most interesting thinkers and doers in this industry to want to collaborate, and we just do that for fun, and it ends up being pretty cool as well, and gets the audience in the right mindset. So it's different from doing a movie trailer, because the movie trailer you have the entire movie to take from. This you don't. You have to put some parts of the story without showing too much, because you don't want to get the audience to
understand what's happening,
to understand, or but also to have an image in their heads. When I describe a character, I want the reader to shape that character on their own head, so I cannot show it too much, so the reader starts to think of that person on the trailer. So it's, even if I show it, it needs to be in a way that's not what stands out. Is the action, is the movement, is the mood, not the specific looks of that scene, of that place, or that character, or that actress, or that actor. So it's a little bit different from doing a movie trailer, because I have to hide some stuff.
Weren't there a discussion that somebody wants to make a movie out of it?
I sold the rights actually to a company in LA, but it was for a limited amount of time. In the beginning of this year, I just got it back because they had some good opportunities to do it, but I wasn't very sure about the direction that they were giving to the script. So because these, it's an entertainment, but it's also based on something so serious to so many people. There are thousands of people that dedicate their lives to that mythology because it's a living religion in some places. The book is not religious whatsoever. The book is about mythology, right? It's a fun book to read. But I have a tremendous respect for what I'm working with, because some people actually dedicate their lives to it. So when I saw the scripts and what they're going and what they're trying to do, for I don't think it's there yet. So we kept moving forward, and it ended up in the end, it didn't. The time that they bought the rights for expired, and I got them back, and I'll hold them until I see the right way to do it.
That's very honorable, I guess.
I think I was honored to have had access to the stories that they tell, and I want to make sure that they're being respected the same way that they were so kind to me. I need to pay that kindness back with respect.
So we established what you have done so far, and one thing I'm really interested in is to learn about you as a person.
Okay.
So why don't we go all the way back to your childhood? So where were you born? Where did you grow up? I
was born in Rio in 1973 from a very hardworking mother and a very creative, spirited father. So my entire childhood was based on, I went to the theater, I went to ballets and operas and movies, and I always had a book, and I always saw my parents reading, and I got very used to, when I was a kid, life was this creative experience. I learned that this is how life was supposed to be. It took me a while to understand that some people didn't have that same experience, that they were not trying to discover new kinds of music, because that's one of my father's favorite things. It was like, oh, there's this new, I just found this guy here from the small town in Brazil, and he worked in radios, and they both used to work for the government there. So my father used to work on the culture side. So he was always kind of bringing these very strange things, and he took pride on finding things that no one knew. And my mom had these incredible work ethics, and she was, before being a woman and working hard and everything was a normal thing, she was there doing it. And I never felt that she was leaving the home aside. So for me, it was always very natural to see. And I think that experience for who my father and my mother were very important for that. I also happened to have an uncle that was very close to me that was a computer programmer. I actually had 3 computer programmers uncles, and they got me into programming very quickly, very early in my life. So my early memories of childhood, I remember myself drawing or writing or programming. Those are the things that I did.
So like opposite spectrum of.
Yeah, I always thought they were, but not really. In the end, they're all about having ideas and trying to take the crazy stuff in your head and vomiting them and trying to make some sense out of them. Like programming is still a very creative. Once you learn the language, it's just writing. It's like you're writing a story. You have to have enough comfort with the language, with English or Portuguese or whatever, and then you tell your story. When you're programming, it's still the same thing. You're telling a story, you're making something work based on a language that you just created enough comfort to it. But it's still a creative. I want to do this and I'm going to make it, and you build it and you craft it, and all of a sudden, voila, is happening, and it's a fascinating experience. It's funny because if you ask my uncles, and they're all going to tell me a story about him when he was a kid, and they're all eventually they're going to tell a story about these parties where everyone would get, but I would just get like paper and pen. I'll give it to anyone and give them a pen and say, just do kind of the craziest thing you can think of on this paper, and I'll take that scribble, that doodle, whatever that there was, and turn it into something that they did not expect it, and like in a face or a boat or a part, it's like, or birds. And I remember doing that, and it was a challenge. The entire family would gather around me to challenge me to see who could do something on a paper with a pen that I couldn't turn into a drawing. And I came out undefeated from like decades of that. They never got one that I couldn't do. It's a very strong memory that we have in our family, and I think that got me into this idea that creativity is a challenge. You can be given a problem saying, let me see if you can solve that with your creative chops. And I love that. And when I get a brief from a client, I still have that same tingly sensation that I had when I saw something that didn't look like anything and I had to make it look like something.
So how was the Rio back in the day? Because when I read history a little bit of Brazil, I think it was a military government, and here you are talking about creative parents and your uncles, and it seems like it was pretty happy childhood.
Yeah, it was very happy, and my memories are very good. But there are lots of things happening, and I give my parents, both my mom and my dad, a lot of credit for that. Now that I'm a father myself, I can finally understand what they did. That they protected me from everything else. It was a dictatorship. People were dying. People were being shot on the streets, and people were disappearing just because they wrote a small article in the university paper that it was against the government. They would just disappear, never show up again. I had people in my family that got arrested. I got people in my family that got shot because they were protesting against the government. But somehow that I got shielded from that a little bit. And the other side of that is that, in the 70s, imagine like the Cold War world, and the world was pretty threatening thing. So what happened across the globe was that there were all sorts of crazy cults being born and kind of trying to promise it's salvation before or after the end of the world. I grew up in one of those as well. From birth until I was 21 or 22, I was living inside of a cult, and with all the evil things. The experience writing my last book was mostly telling the story of how it is to be in a cult, and with an evil person that is trying to dominate everyone through like the craziest mental processes and tortures and stuff like that. But again, for me, I didn't feel that. My parents went through a lot of that, and now as an adult, I can talk to them and they tell me the stories, and it's horrifying, some of it. But for me, I was sure it's like, that movie Life is Beautiful.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit like that. So my childhood was like that. My parents made me feel like I was always in a creative, beautiful, happy game, and they were dealing with all that crap around me.
Wow, that's very amazing parents. Did you have any siblings?
I have a brother and a sister. They're twins.
Oh,
Yeah.
How different are they from you personality-wise?
They very, very different. My brother is a head and neck surgeon. So
Okay, yeah,
he
different.
does serious stuff. He actually works on something important. My sister works in marketing, so she does the opposite of me. But we talk a lot, and I learn a lot from her perspective as a client. I give her a lot of perspective as an agency, and I have one of my creatives here used to work for her as a client. She used to be his client, and he says that she was one of her favorite clients ever, because she understands the pain that I go through, and so she empathizes with the creatives on the other side. So, and I think that in the advertising business, if you're a client and you walk in a room wanting to approve good work, everything works. If you walk in, if okay, there's someone that is bleeding for you, I'm going to go there and try to work. If the person doesn't have anything that I like that solve my problem, fine. But I'm going to walk in trying to do it. There's that saying that the writing is very easy. You just sit in front of the typewriter and bleed, right? And I think that for every creative profession, that's what it is. You get in front of your blank piece of paper, your computer, your typewriter, your canvas, whatever, and you bleed. You have to throw yourself and put everything. It's a very vulnerable situation. There are very few things, though, creative opportunities that you work only by yourself. Like even writing feels like a very solitary profession or activity, but eventually you have to work with your editor and the store people and the press, and there are more people involved. As a creative, if you want to take something, this is one lesson that I learned about how to work with creative people. They react in a whole new way if they feel like you want to approve, you want to say yes to something good, even if that means saying no to something, to what you're bringing, because it's not good enough. That is a creative challenge, and we all thrive and get excited about that. And if you're a banker, or if you're a soccer coach, or if you're a marketer, it doesn't matter. Eventually you're going to be working with someone whose task is a creative task. If you get in a room and you sit in front of them and they feel like that person wants me to succeed, wants me to do something special, I'm going to kill for you. That person is going to kill for you and is going to do whatever it takes to make you happy. We feed on the smiles. We feed on the excitement, even if it takes a couple rounds to get there. That's why people say that there's so much ego involved in the creative, like soccer players in the World Cup now. If you see like the Russians, they will look at the crowd and they wave their arms to get the crowd to roar. It's not because they needed that for their ego. It's because they feed on that. Great soccer player is a creative professional as much as I am, as much as a painter is, as a theater actor is. We feed on the feedback that we get to our craft. And if you feel that people getting there wanting you to succeed, you do your best. That's when everyone takes the most out of it.
When did you realize that you actually want to be in advertising?
It took me a while. It wasn't my first choice. I first started as a computer programmer, and I loved it. But eventually I felt like there's something more creative out there that I can do. I went into consultancy because I wanted to get into the business world, and went to study marketing. I felt like this is what it is. Went to business school, studied, won paper awards there, was doing pretty good, and was offered to, after I graduated, I could skip master's and go straight into my PhD in any school I chose in the country. And they were all like, oh, you should come here. And I started to go to some of those schools and see what a PhD does in management and in business. And I saw all those researches and those numbers, and saw kind of these little cubicles or these little offices with piles of papers and books. I felt like, I love to read. I love to write. I love to look at data and find stuff and find patterns and turn them into something different. But I cannot see myself living my entire life on this. So I feel like, all right, I'm about to finish my business school here. Most of my choices I made in marketing, how can I make sure that it wasn't a waste of time? And I remember kind of the experience of being there, kind of talking to my colleagues and my classmates. And it's like, yeah, what did you do this weekend? And they were all like studying or doing sports. And for me, my free time was always like writing or painting or reading or doing something creative. It's like, why do you waste your time doing that? You should be like studying more and practicing more. You're doing great here. You can stand out and be like a great student, but you just need to put your energy on studying and on the practical stuff. But that's not what I want. And when I realized that, I feel like, and I actually need to combine what I'm learning here with my creative skills. And by looking around, if like, yeah, advertising is where it belongs. So I sent a couple emails to a few agencies in Brazil that time. It's like, yeah, I think this internet thing combines management and technology and creativity, and is going to have something to do with advertising marketing. Why don't you hire me to figure that out? And one agency replied immediately and made me an offer the next day and kind of flew me to Sao Paulo the next day, actually. And the following day, they made me an offer, and all of a sudden I was there trying to figure out what the internet had to do with advertising. Was kind of one of the first generation, one of the few in that first generation of people trying to understand how those two things match. And I was very lucky because it was a combination of writing and the visuals and programming that I had in my hand. I found the perfect job for me. And that agency at that time the agency is called DM9. Now it's part of an agency, a big network called DDB. That agency, a few years, I worked in every department there. I ended up going to the creative department after 2 years because I kept getting fired from all the departments. Oh, you're cool. Yeah, you have something, but you don't belong here. So they moved to the next department. And then when I got in creative, I felt like this is what I'm meant to do. And that was the year that the Cannes Festival you were talking in the beginning started the interactive category. And that year, I thought, let's try to enter it. So let's see what happens. So I won a gold. The next year, I won another gold and was invited to be in the jury, and everything took off from there. Kind of then 2 years later, I started my own agency there, kind of won a bunch of stuff, kind of built a name for myself. And then a few years later, sold the agency, moved here to San Francisco.
So it was Agencia Click, right?
Exactly.
And how did you say this started?
So DM9 got bought by DDB, right? And the owners of the agency decided to leave, right? It's like, yeah, they felt constrained. It's like, yeah, we're leaving. And they couldn't work in advertising. They have a kind of pretty strong non-compete. So they called me and say, hey, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to build a portal here. I'm going to invest some of my money in doing a portal here. Do you want to live with me? Because you're my internet guy. Do you want to be to be the creative director on these internet thing? And like, no. It's like, what do you mean no? It's like, you're the only person I'm trying to bring with me. Don't do that to me. It's like, no, I'm not saying no to you. I'm saying no to that plan. How about this? You invest on an agency that I can run. This portal of yours becomes my first client, and we go in business together, and we both, so I help you do it, what you're trying to do. You help me do what I want to do. And they said, yes, let's do it. And Agencia Click was born out of that conversation. We looked around. There was a small company. There was kind of a group of people that were very intelligent doing there, but didn't have a creative flair to it. And we went there and kind of got everything together. They had clients as well. Got these clients, and we put all those pieces together. They offered me, so you want to be the CEO? Or want to be VP of creative? And so I'll prefer to just only creative. And they had all the other elements. If like, that's the perfect combination, let's do it. And we got together. Agencia Click was born there.
Oh, amazing. And then for some reason you decided to sell it.
I decided to move from Brazil. The violence in Brazil started to get really under my nerves, and it was very hard. It's like they call it a flash kidnap, and people walked in my car, put a gun in my face, myself and my wife, and kept us for hours, got our money. I couldn't tell if they were going to kill us or not, and it was very traumatizing. And after that, I felt like I spent 1 year trying to see if I was going to get over that, but I didn't. I can't live in the city where this happened anymore. And I couldn't move back to Rio because it was still similar anyway. So like I need to move to another country. And a friend of mine had moved at that point, had moved to an agency called AKQA. That is an agency, was founded in London, was headquartered in San Francisco, and he was going to open their office in New York. And I got his email, said, "Hey, if you hear about anything here in that market, I'm thinking of moving as well." I said, "Okay, really?" So I can introduce you to my boss, and he introduced me to his boss, and again, 6 months later, I was in San Francisco working for AKQA as the head of creative, kind of the ECD, the executive creative director there. And it was about that same time they were going through like a big revolution in the agency. Like they hired 3 of the top 5 most awarded guys of the last 3 years. I was one of them. That friend of mine that introduced me was another one. And the other guy was coming from RGA in New York, and it's kind of one of my best friends, a Japanese named Ray Inamoto. Mm-hmm. So it was like a Danish guy called Lars Bassholm, coming from, came straight from Denmark to New York. A Japanese guy named Ray Inamoto that was in New York, was moving to San Francisco, and a Brazilian moving from Sao Paulo to San Francisco as well, kind of in charge of changing these agencies' profile. At the same time that they were doing this, it was a very ambitious plan. They also hired a bunch of people on the business side to boost the new business capability and the thinking and everything. One of these guys was a dude that walked in a suit, and I hated him, and it's like I hope I don't have to work with him, because we could, and he hated me as well. If you could tell, like, this is the guy, this is the suit that is going to be wants to tell me what to do, and he looked at me and said, "This is the creative that is going to try to make my life so much more difficult because it's going to be unreasonable all the time." That guy named to be a dude from Tennessee, named Pereira O'Dell.
I felt like I know where it's going.
and a few years later, we left to build he also had built an agency before. He also sold his agency to the same guys that bought mine, that was Aegis. And that kind of caused the jokes to start to flow. And then it's like, yeah, maybe we should do something together. Yeah, we should. Maybe we should. Yeah, let's do it. And then we did it. And we got investment from the same guys we invested at Agencia Click, invested on this agency as well.
So you guys started in 2008.
Yes.
And that's where financial crisis just started.
Talk about PTSD. It's like, yeah, that's another one of those.
I know that advertising budgets are one of the first to be cut when the crisis came. How did you guys survive that?
When we decided to do this and when we resigned our jobs, the world was still pretty. We resigned in November, worked through December to leave things in good shape so they could do well without us. We gave ourselves 3 months to build everything, to open the agency in the beginning of April. And while we were preparing, the world collapsed. So, and we had no choice. At that point, we had investment in the bank. It was just the 2 of us. And so we cannot go back. They're not going to take us back. And we had to do it. So I think that was more of lack of choice than anything. Sometimes I feel like we're the Forrest Gump of advertising. You know, that scene in Forrest Gump when he buys a shrimp boat and goes out in the sea and catches nothing, but there's a hurricane that takes all the boats down and he's left with the only working boat. I think that kind of happened to us. We had the only working boat because we had money and we were building when everyone was contracting and closing and desperate. We were the only ones that had some level of bravery because we had no choice.
Who was your first client?
Lego. Yeah, it was a very, very interesting moment as well. Yeah.
So this idea of Lego shooting its own movies, where did that come from? Is it from you guys, or is that...
No, it wasn't from us. I wish it was, but it has always been they're such a beloved brand that I had always, they kept talking about, there's a chance of doing something with Hollywood. They want to do something with us, but I don't like the script. Script. And I learned a lot from them and how they kept their commitment to great creative. And they didn't do it. They could have done it 10 years before, but they didn't do it until they found they had a script, a story that was worth their brand. And that was one of my biggest learnings in my career ever. And it kind of is we were talking about how we didn't do the movie about the books until I found the script that I felt like was worth the story, and the privilege that I had to write about the treasures, the cultural treasures of that people. They are the ones who taught me that.
How is Pereira O'Dell different from Agência Click and AKQA?
I think it comes to those two shops. It's funny because it's different, but now it's becoming the same, right? Agência Click was clearly and proudly a digital agency. We did digital work, right? AKQA is proudly and clearly a digital agency. When we started this place, the opportunity that we saw from a business standpoint is that there was a generation of agencies being created at that time that were claiming to be able to do both traditional advertising and digital advertising together. We felt like if there was a generation being created claiming to do both, but they were all coming from the traditional side, there was a space for one that was coming from the digital side as well. So Andrew and I decided, let's create that agency that is going to be a full service agency, a hybrid agency. That's what they call it at that time, but founded by people that come from digital. And that's the vision that we set for ourselves, and that's how we operated. We brought people from all disciplines of marketing and put together to work here, but still the leadership, both on his side and mine, was still coming from decades of digital marketing experience. But at that time, the reason why most of them are coming from traditional is because that was still the like a TV spots were still the element that was determining everything else. And I think that now when brands are seeing themselves more as experiences than campaigns, the digital component to that is becoming way more critical than anything else. The digital element is the glue that connects everything. So all of a sudden, our experience coming from digital and our experience building stories in a digital world and dealing with people on these territories put us in a very, very privileged position as well. Some of that I can say that, we had a vision 10 years ago, but some of that is that we got lucky that the vision was right. We could have gone for a different kind of vision, or maybe the world would have been much slower to evolve into that thing. But, fortunately it happened all the right ways for us.
Many businesses pride themselves saying that their business is about their people, right? And I think in creative businesses like advertising, it's especially true. How do you choose your teammates, and how do you able to keep them working for you without leaving?
I think that there are multiple sides. One of them is that I want to attract the ambitious ones. I want to attract people that want to honestly do things that are going to be considered great. They're going to cause envy and jealousy, and from our peers and from the peers of our clients. That sounds like a very, very egotistical aspiration, but once you put that on the ground and actually put it to work, it creates amazing results. And that's what makes an agency build a profile and do work that attracts the best talent. And once you have the best talent, you can do better work that is going to create better results. So that's one side of that. It's like doing an ambition for greatness that is very honest. There's the other side of that didn't come from me, is that you need to build something a place that people actually like to work. And I'll give Andrew credit for that, because he has always been very keen on building an environment where people bonded together, felt like a team, and wanted to win, not against their peers on the next desk, but together against the other agencies and the other clients that our clients were competing against. So we built a very competitive structure, but not cutthroat in terms of, let's beat the person next to us. We have a very good sense of team here, very team spirit here. And I think that those two things built a culture that we like and appreciate and makes us want to do more. But we can't ignore as well that if this is a business that is very talent and inspiration and is very people-based, there are a lot of transformation happening out there, and it's becoming a technology business as well. And that is probably the greatest challenge that this industry is going to have, is how to incorporate the potential of the technology, artificial intelligence, and automation of the processes, because we tend to resist. But I'm a geek. I started my career as a programmer. I think I welcome this. I want to see what marketing will be once everyone is the art directors and the copywriters are as comfortable with each other as they are with the tech people sitting next desk, because this is what's going to become. It's the creativity of art and copy and bytes collaborating to create things that we could never do in generations prior to ours.
When I was touring the office, I saw a punching bag, and I believe you're a big martial arts fan.
Yeah.
And you've done several of them, I believe. But you chose Kung Fu, right?
Kung Fu is the first one that really got me, that I practiced for more than 10 years, and as the one thing that I was doing since I was a teenager in Rio. I started, I think, when I was 13, 14, and got my black belt when I was 20, 21. Then I moved to Sao Paulo and kind of kept trying other things. I did boxing, did Aikido, Judo, I did a bunch of stuff. Did other styles of Kung Fu, and then I moved to San Francisco, but never took anything too far. And then moved to San Francisco, stopped doing it, felt very unhappy for not doing it. I was something like like a limb missing. Finally, I broke an ankle, and it was in pain. I was in pain every day in the morning. So I need to go back to doing something so I can loosen up my joints, and I'm gonna go back to fighting. So I found a teacher again, started to study Kung Fu, another style of Kung Fu, and got to instructor level again, like equivalent to a black belt level. Then he asked me if I wanted to learn karate with him. Now I'm learning karate. I'm kind of preparing for my black belt exam in karate as well. And on the side, I do like boxing every now and then. I did some Brazilian jiu-jitsu to try to learn how to survive on the ground. And I love fighting. I love what it teaches in terms of strategy. I mean, I think that from all the things that I've learned in my life, fighting is the one that has the biggest impact in my career in advertising. It's not the creative part, is fighting, because one is a very creative activity. It's not coincidence that it's called martial arts, because it's an art. You have to create real time and react to what's happening in front of you, and you're putting yourself at risk while doing that, which is something that art feels like. But it also teaches a lot about strategy, how to think about winning against someone that is going to try to defeat. So building a PowerPoint with a strategy is not gonna do you any good, because you're gonna have a game plan. You're gonna start there, and they're going to change and adjust to your plan, and you're gonna have to find an opening anyway and create a new plan on the go. And also teaches to do well under pressure. I think the combination of all those things that I learned in fighting made me a much better advertising professional than any of the other things that I've learned in my life.
That's interesting. And those belts that you got black belt in Kung Fu, and you mentioned that you probably gonna get black belt. I'm sure you're gonna get it. Right?
I'm working hard for that. But so I'm not sure yet. Is
your goal a belt, or belt is more like a result of what you're doing?
The belt is a sense of accomplishment. It's a sense that my mind works in journeys that I need an end so I can keep going. So I need to see if this is the goal that I want to achieve, and this is where I want to get. And the black belt helps me focus on that. It helps me stay doing it. So I'm training karate. I've been training karate for a while, and I need to get to a black belt. The black belt is more of a finish line to me that will set me free to think about what's the next goal, but also a prison that I cannot stop until I cross it than anything else. I'm very, very goal oriented. So I need to get somewhere. I need to know where what is the point the checkpoint for, okay, I achieved it. So I can think about the next one. It's a prison. It's not very pleasant. Sometimes it drives me crazy, but it's how my brain operates.
That's great. In one of your interviews, I saw you mentioned that family is the most important thing to you.
Mm-hmm.
As we're speaking, I'm thinking you have your career as a very successful advertiser, and you have writing, you have kanjuri, and all the projects you're involved in, you have your mixed martial arts. How do you balance it with your family?
It's a great question. I make that question to myself all the time. My wife makes that question all the time. But I would say that it's like this. First of all, I cannot be a good husband or a good father or a good son or a good brother if I don't feel good with myself. So if I'm not healthy, if I'm not happy, if I don't feel fulfilled. So all those things are parts of that you described. They're all part of me that help me feel balanced enough. But that's almost like a cheat of like, yeah, you're saying that, but then it's like that steals time from your family. I try to spend as much time as I can. Even while I'm doing that, I do with them, around them. So I don't train my martial arts. Most of it I train at home with them around me. I brought my son to train with me. Whenever I can, I have to travel whenever I can. I bring them with me as well. I try to keep all those layers of my life intertwined as much as possible. But if my family needs me, I'll drop everything else. If someone gets sick, or if my son is having trouble at school and he's having a hard time and needs me there, I'll drop everything to stay with them and help them. And when that matters, nothing else comes close. And if I have to lose a job or lose a client or lose anything because of them, I will.
That's a fantastic perspective.
But they're very very generous with the time with me as well. They let me do. They know that I'm happier. I'm a better person, a better father, and everything when I'm happy. So they actually push me to do it, and they can tell me if like you're getting cranky, you need to do more of this or that. I'm very lucky to have the family that I have. From my parents to my son, I've been blessed with good people that actually push me forward instead of trying to hold me back all the time. And I know a lot of people that are much smarter than me that couldn't move, couldn't fulfill their potential just because they had people around them that were more important with the amount of time that they were spending with them than with the quality of the time they were spending. And exactly because of that, when they need, I have to drop everything.
That's amazing to hear. So I have this quick blitz for you. I'm going to ask you a question. Just give me a quick answer. Okay. What's your favorite movie?
The Matrix.
Favorite movie star?
Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen is the guy who played Ip Man.
Oh, Emmy. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's
mixed martial arts.
Exactly.
Duh. Your favorite TV show?
It was Lost in the past. Right now, I'll say The Handmaid's Tale.
Who's your favorite singer or band?
I like old Brazilian music, like anything from the 80s in Brazil. I have so much fun just going back to the time machine.
What's your favorite song?
My favorite song depends, but it would be definitely Brazilian songs from Brazilian rock from the 80s. Any day will be a different one, but you're not going to know them anyway.
Yeah, Brazilian rock, yeah. So it's very interesting. What's your favorite commercial?
My favorite commercial, I can name a few, but I think that the two that I remember most that make me the most jealous, one is a newspaper, a British newspaper called The Independent. The entire spot is a voice, is like black and white images, and is a voice saying, "Don't do this, don't do that, don't walk on the rain, don't walk on the grass, don't love, don't do, don't." It's like all the don'ts that the most conservative perspective in the world. And then in the very end, they show the newspaper and say, "Don't read, don't buy." And if like, this is so wonderful, because by saying no to everything, it makes you like, yes, I've been angry at this voice for such a long time. Now I want to do the opposite. Then when it says don't buy, I want to buy it. It's like brilliant. And the other one is like one of the sweetest and most understated spots. It's not some of the one like big awards, but it's an old Coca-Cola ad. That happens with it's like a Macy's parade or something like that, and like all those floaters are kind of on the parade, and then like the Coca-Cola floater, kind of bottle Coca-Cola, just gets loose and starts to fly away, and then all the other floats just start to fly and try to get it first, and it's such a beautiful little story that I'm like, I wish I had done that. And so those are two very different spots that I wish I had done.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book. It's a Japanese book called Musashi. It's a story
Samurai.
of the greatest samurai of all time. It's a story that was originally published in the newspaper in Japan, on Sunday or Saturday edition of the newspaper. So all the chapters very packed with action. They're very like crazy cliffhangers, and they're self-contained. So it's like you finish one chapter, you have to go to another one. But at the same time, there's an adventure. It's also a love story, and there's a very paternal element on that. It's like a wonderful tale. They call it like the Gone with the Wind of Japan, and is by far my favorite book ever.
What's your favorite sport to watch?
Favorite sport to watch? I would say that is any fighting sports. Probably like I'm really into watching UFC right now, because it's like I can root for the traditional martial artists there and kind of see if they're gonna win, and lots of Brazilians as well.
Oh yeah, it's very much.
Yeah.
Half of them. Who's your favorite UFC fighter?
Anderson Silva.
No wonder. Very creative.
Yeah, very creative, very open-minded, and probably the greatest of all time on that sport.
Agree. Your favorite place in Bay Area?
My house. If I like a couple years ago, I managed to take a full month of vacation. I went to my house, got in. I only got in the car twice in 30 days to buy stuff and come back. But like my house is my favorite place in the world.
What's your favorite country to visit?
I love going back to Brazil because, there's family, they're like my readers, and there's some of my roots are there. So it has a very powerful connection. But I love going to China as well, because of my connection with Kung Fu, something that I've been doing for such a long time. Every time I go there, I feel so impressed and lost and found at the same time that I love going. I'm going there to teach at a workshop in November. I'm super excited about that.
Who's your favorite historical figure?
Favorite historical figure? You know what? I think I was at the jury at Cannes this year again, and the jury there was a titanium jury that is a very special jury where the creators go there to present stuff. And I remember seeing these two girls from London. I think one is from, actually they work in London, but I think one was Italian, the other one is British, was English. And they were presenting a campaign about menstruation and how they wanted to normalize menstruation. They call it blood normal, and they presented that with so much passion. That was one of those moments I feel like I so wanted to be them right now, and have that passion for what I do. So I like to instead of historical figures, I tend to want to be the person that still has a chance to build things, and those are the ones that get my jealousy. It's like, they're in the early stages of their life, they have so much to accomplish, and I see that energy. I want to be that person right now.
Do you have any favorite quotes?
Nothing resists to good work.
What's the first item on your bucket list?
My first item on the bucket list. I want to win a fighting championship because I've never been able to do it.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, and I'm only getting older and further from that. But one day I'm gonna find a seniors competition, and but it's one of the things that I still feel like I don't like to compete on martial arts myself. I like the other side of the journey, but I think this is something missing on my list, and like I need to do it someday.
And the final question: what life advice would you give to your son?
It's strange because it has nothing to do with any of the things that we talked, but if you're not hungry, don't eat that. Because this is something that I struggled my entire adult life, was food addiction and the feeling that I had to finish the plate, because one is for my obsession with finishing things, and two, because you grow up in Brazil hearing like there's so many people starving to death here, you're going to leave food on the plate. That guilt kind of kills me. And I grew up feeling like I had the obligation to eat anything, and that caused so many health problems. One thing that I wish I have heard that I want to pass to him is like, if you don't want to eat it, if you don't feel hungry, you don't feel like eating, you don't have to eat it. And I think that is going to give him health, and health is what you need to be whoever you want to be.
Thank you very much, PJ. It was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Accent Podcast. For more episodes, please visit theaccentpodcast.com. Until next time.